All right.
Now we're moving on to
changing
crazy
pace
dramatically.
dramatically.
Now I'm assuming we're going to talk about the Lighthouse here.
Let's talk about the Lighthouse. Yeah, let's talk about the Lighthouse.
I remember you picked that movie. I looked it up, and I was like, okay, psychological horror. It's a movie about some guys who are stuck in a lighthouse. Okay, there's going to be something weird. I thought it would be something like... honestly, there's nothing I can relate it to. This movie is so unique, and
yeah.
But I will say that immediately I was drawn in. I had no idea it was black and white. I saw black and white on the poster. I saw black and white images, but I thought that was, I don't know, some sort of like marketing thing. I didn't realize the entire movie
just to
was
get you
shot
interested in the movie.
Let me get my notes for this one.
Yeah, this movie is insane. So this movie, if you guys haven't seen it, it's a psychological horror is how it's technically defined. And perhaps I should have looked into more of exactly what that is, more so than when I went into it. So this one is on Amazon Prime, if you have it. We'll get into whether I would recommend this movie or not, or whether you would, but it's very intense. So this movie, basically, you're watching...
You got Robert
I don't
Pattinson.
know the exact... Yeah, you got Robert
And
Pattinson, who... Right. You got Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe. And I knew very little about this movie coming into it. I had actually heard good things from some of my friends who like scary movies a little better. I assumed it was going to be pretty scary.
Yeah, same.
But I was so expecting it to be...
like jump scares.
Like a traditional... Yeah, like a traditional scary movie where they're under attack from some freaking... demon squid, or from there's mer people that are coming out of the water and trying to get in their cabin and they're fighting them off. I did not think it was going to be so much of just them running from themselves almost, or from each other, as much as it was. But gosh, this was intense. So this was probably set in the 1800s.
I believe
think they were
it's
referencing
late 1800s or early 1900s. But I'm pretty sure it's 1870s, 1880s.
Yeah. And this movie's completely in black and white from beginning to end.
Yeah, so I took a lot of film classes where we had to study specifically really old films, and you notice it immediately that it's shot in a different aspect ratio. It's shot almost in a perfect square. I can't remember what the exact ratio, but it's basically a 1-to-1 ratio. It's a square, and so the sides of the screen are black, whereas modern films we shoot in a much thinner, wider ratio because of it comes from Western films. They were one of the first films to do that because they wanted to show the vastness and the epicness of the expanse of the Wild West, and so to show it wide kind of draws viewers in more and shows more of the landscape, and so you get a lot more of that openness. But a film like this, where you're literally stuck in a lighthouse the entire time, is this one setting. I think it's genius because you feel claustrophobic. You're watching this and you feel enclosed in with them because you're not used to this.
You feel the space. Yeah. You definitely feel the space. You do.
So let's talk about the cinematography for a second. Let's forego the writing and what it means and all that. Let's talk about the cinematography. There's a theory that's called the invisible director, the invisible hand. It's got a bunch of different names. The idea is that the director is not noticed. You don't see the intent. It's as natural as it could possibly be. And I think The Lighthouse is as far away from that as possible. Every shot is intently placed. Every single shot has, it's almost like a comic book, it very much feels like an old-fashioned film in that every single shot is a composed piece of art. And I thought it was very beautifully shot. I thought the use of the dark, when you don't have the color and all you have is the dark and the light, it creates a different feeling, it creates a different image, and as a director, you have to look at different things. It's like painting in black and white versus painting, with color. You're having to focus on value versus color and the emotion that the black and white, gives to you as a viewer. And so obviously with a film like this, most of it was black. It's very dark. What did you think of the cinematography? I thought it was very masterfully done. I thought it was beautiful.
I thought it was obviously it was different.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at a film in black and white. I can't even tell you the last time I watched a black and white film. It was probably the beginning of Schindler's List in school when they're showing you that. I think that other than that, I cannot remember the last time I watched a black and white. And of course, that one's not all black and white, but I can't tell you the last time I watched a black and white film. It's been a long time. But
does that, as a viewer, does that take you out of the film?
Well, I think the problem with this one is you got to remember, to those of you who have seen it or those of you who haven't, this entire film takes place, as Chris was saying, in a maybe 15 by 15 shed or in a lighthouse, which I don't know if any of the viewers live by the coast or have ever been in like one of those historic lighthouse things where you can walk up. It's so claustrophobic and there's no room at all. So you're basically seeing the same 3, maybe 4 settings for the entire movie. Now, it's not an extremely, other than the outside, it's not an extremely long movie, but it's also not, it's not a little short film. It's not a 20-minute film. And so I felt like I thought it was a different and an interesting change to be filming a black and white movie. But I started feeling like towards maybe about the halfway point, I almost felt like I could have just closed my eyes and listened to this movie and probably have understood and have kind of felt the same way about it coming out of it, because you're not really like the visual. It sets up the set, like the scenery, and it sets up the feeling and the anxiety and the claustrophobia so well. But then nothing really changes. The whole movie kind of takes place on that little rock. And so by like halfway through, I'm like, okay, I get it. They're living in squalor. It's old. They're using old stuff. It started to feel like I was reading a book, because it was like the visual wasn't doing anything for me. And, I appreciated it, not like you do, obviously. Like, I didn't know that about like the square aspect ratio, but I appreciated the difference of having a film that was put in black and white. But it started to lose me like halfway through, because I was just like, oh my God. And maybe that was what they wanted. Maybe they wanted me to feel like I just wanted to get out or get off that island or move away. And that's how the characters felt too. And if so, mission accomplished.
Well,
because like halfway through that movie,
about halfway through, but mostly because I had no idea what the fuck was going on. Like,
yeah, and that's definitely part of it too. That was part of it too. This film made me feel stupid. I watched this film and it made me feel dumb, because I kind of felt like the whole time this was either referencing a book that I haven't read, or an old film that I haven't seen, or some story about like sea folklore that I've never heard. And it just made me feel like, okay, as just like a person just living in like a normal society who's not super well versed on like old poetry or like old stories that maybe this was based off of, I knew it was... I looked into it a little bit, and so I guess there's a Lighthouse story that Edgar Allan Poe wrote. I've never read that.
Yeah.
So for me, this movie was just, it lost me, because I was just kind of like, it feels like I'm supposed to be like appreciating a reference to something that I don't understand.
So was it the dialogue or was it the actual context? Because the dialogue is also very old-fashioned.
It is. And look, you got Willem Dafoe, who, for all intents and purposes, looks like the prom king at like a high school for cavemen. Like, this dude looks like the most handsome Neanderthal that has ever walked the earth, but he is a phenomenal actor. Like, he's got kind of a look to him, but a phenomenal actor. And so, you kind of get into it, because here's this kind of kooky looking dude, and he's talking an old folk talk, an old 1800s talk. I think it all started to lose me, to be honest with you. And again, I don't even know if maybe it's fair for us to review this, because I'm sure it was alluding to things that are over my head or I'm not well versed in. But I was marketed this movie in the theaters. It was marketed to me for everything else that I was seeing. And here I am thinking this is going to be, I guess I kind of thought it was going to be a psychological thriller. And it was more so like an old school horror,
right.
But take away the like goofy monster. There's no creature from the Black Lagoon. It was just their own psyche that started to just kind of break and drive them mad. And if you like that kind of thing, a very dense movie with a lot of character backstory, here's kind of the opposite, where now you're getting like really into these characters, and there's 2 of them, 3 if you count like the mermaid chick, which I don't. She's not really like a character. She's just like a symbol. But it started to lose me, I think, because of all of it. It started to lose me because visually, I was getting bored. Like, I can understand as a critic that you might like the look of that movie and how it's different, and that's fine. But I was bored. Of it halfway through. I was bored of the visual. I wanted to see something in color. I was bored of the setting. I was tired of that house or them just being drunk. I felt like this whole movie was just, you're watching 2 guys get hammered and go crazy.
Yeah.
And if that sounds interesting to you and you haven't seen it yet, then go ahead. But both the dialogue and the visual, to be honest, lost me about halfway through. I caught myself pausing it a couple times to see how much time was left. And I didn't do that in Rise of Skywalker. And if it hadn't been for the fact that we knew we were going to review this in this podcast for everybody else, I don't know 100% I would have made it through. I'm not entirely sure.
No, I mean, that's completely fair. I think it's different for me because I am seeing it through the eyes of a director. And so I'm seeing it through, I'm seeing the process that it took for them to create the images, because the very first time you see the two of them together, you're seeing the two beds and they're divided by this wall or a pole. I'm not sure what it was, but like the image is a square that's divided down the center with one of them on each side. And the symbolism in that is there's going to be tension. Like that opening shot really foreshadows what's going to come. There's a couple moments where they're getting angry with each other and you see their shadows behind them, and like the shadows get more and more, like they get bigger as the film goes on. And I thought that was very good it did a good job at foreshadowing, again, the ending of the film, if that makes sense at all, because the ending is one of those where you're not really quite sure what's happening. And I noticed that there's a definite tonal shift in the film right after he beats the living shit out of that gull.
Yeah, he destroys that seagull. So viewer beware. There's some animal abuse in this movie. I don't think that was a real bird. If it was already dead.
Yeah,
I'm sure they're not going to have
I don't think it was.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
I'm pretty sure PETA would say something about that.
So for you, The Lighthouse just wasn't... It didn't hold your attention enough.
It definitely didn't. No, I would say about halfway through, and both the dialogue and the visual it got old. They were talking about the same kind of things. Mm-hmm. I was seeing the same things. I know we were kind of just watching these guys delve into, I guess, insanity, but yeah, they lost me, man. They lost me about halfway through.
So I noticed that alcohol kind of plays a little bit of symbolism in the film, and a lot of symbolism, really. And you see, at first, Robert Pattinson's character, what was it, Wilson? I have it written here. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was
Ephraim
Winslow at the beginning. Ephraim Winslow, and then it turns into Thomas Howard.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Ephraim Winslow, first time he gets offered alcohol, he says no. And this is the moment, when we're seeing him, he seems like a sane person. Seems completely normal. He seems quiet and reserved, but he refuses the alcohol because it's against regulation. The second time he's offered alcohol, he takes a little sip. And at this point, he's already starting to kind of lose his mind a little bit because he's tired of being here with this old guy. And then every time we see alcohol from then on, all the way up until the point where they're guzzling this, his sanity is just out the window by that point. So, there's a shot where he's getting coal, and the coal is just covered in water, and it's just the bottle is sitting in the wheelbarrow as he's taking it back, and so the alcohol is just front and center in the beginning, or at the forefront of the shot, and the lighthouse in the back. So I guess my question is, do you think that the alcohol played some sort of key in them losing their sanity, or is it a symbol of their sanity? Are they even insane? There's so much imagery that we see there that we're not sure what's real and what's not.
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of like Shutter Island, where at the end of it, they're trying to play with your rationality. Mm-hmm. Is like, Robert Pattinson's character is trying to escape, and then Willem Dafoe's character comes up and breaks the boat with an axe. But then he tells them when they get back that Robert Pattinson was the one that broke the boat and chased him. And it's like your whole perception is just getting tested in this. And I think, it's the 1800s. It's disgusting. Like, dude, they got, cans basically that they're using the bathroom in. He gets covered in it when he's trying to go throw it out. Mm-hmm. They're stuck on a freaking island with each other for, I don't even remember how long they were supposed to be on there. Like
4 weeks supposed to be.
4 weeks. Yeah, and then it turned into way longer, I suppose, or it just ended or whatever.
We're not really sure.
I think anybody would go insane. And I think it was like, is that whole movie just supposed to be them getting pent up and bored on that island? Like, That's why I felt like this movie made me feel dumb, man, because it's like, what are we like?
You're
what,
not
what are
alone
we
there,
doing?
man. You're not alone. And
Yeah.
I did research after the fact. So there was a lot of stuff. I mean, I made notes galore as far as like the story that I did not understand certain things. But I was more questioning, like, throughout the film, at first you're with Robert Pattinson. You're on his side. You're like, okay, there's no way this guy's crazy. He's acting normal. The old guy's clearly a kook. But then as the film goes on, you start to question whether we're seeing what is going on in Winslow's mind, and the what's his name, Tom, the old guy, whether or not he is the one who's actually sane, because he flips the switch on us a couple times throughout the movie, where Winslow says that he's been waiting for like 24 hours for this boat to arrive, and then Tom tells him, dude, it's been weeks. It's been weeks and you've been getting violent with me, and then you're like,
Right.
We as viewers didn't see that. So we're not aware that that's happened, but the way he's acting makes you question whether or not he's telling the truth. So you're not sure which character to side with. Is the old guy
Yeah.
crazy, or has Ephraim been crazy this entire time and we're just unaware of it? And then it flips back and forth, because then Tom starts to act kind of like a villain, and then we're on Ephraim's side and like, no, like obviously Tom is playing tricks on him. He really did see something at the top of the lighthouse, and it's making him go crazy. But then it flips it again, and you're just not sure where to go. You're not sure what to think about either of these characters. And I think it's intentional, because I think it's meant to make you question your own sanity, like you said, your own rationality, because you're not sure of what's going on in the film. So I guess my question for you: do you think there was something at the top of the lighthouse? Because we saw, for those of the viewers who have seen it, we did see for a moment where he's looking up, and it's one of the only moments that the film uses sound to kind of portray the intensity of the emotion.
Yeah, that like intense muted
And the
scream.
tentacle. Well, no, not even then yet.
God.
The first time, before he's even made it to the top.
Oh, when he sees him up there like masturbating or whatever.
Was he
and then
masturbating? I mean, I'm not
I
sure.
think I don't know. The movie, honestly, it's a pretty disgusting movie.
It is, yeah.
Through and through. The whole thing is nasty.
Yeah, it
I
is
think he
definitely
was.
shocking.
I have no idea. Maybe it's just, again, like maybe we're supposed to be referencing that he's an octopus. I mean, like, dude, I don't know. This is why I feel like this movie makes me feel dumb, because I kind of finished it and I just have no idea what I even watched.
So, I did a little research, because when he gets angry, and it's such a bizarre moment, because he's angry. Tom, the old guy, is angry at Winslow because he didn't like his cooking. They're drunk as shit at this point, but he's angry because he didn't like his cooking, and so he gets up, and you see the shadow rise over him, and he starts cursing him. He puts this like old sailor's curse on him, and he references a few things. He references Prometheus, and he references Proteus. And I know Prometheus. I'm really big on Greek mythology, but I do not know Proteus. So after the film was over, I started doing some research. Now, I think this will be interesting for you, and it'll kind of like maybe connect a few of the dots. Prometheus, if you're not aware, Danny, and if any of the viewers are not, this is the god that climbed Mount Olympus, and he loved humans. He saw them as kind of like something that needed to be nurtured. So he climbed Mount Olympus against the gods' wills and stole fire from the gods and gave it to mankind. That's where we get fire from, according to Greek mythology, is that Prometheus stole it for us to give it to us to protect ourselves, to harness the power of fire. As vengeance, Zeus had him tied to a mountain. He chained him to a mountain, and every day a crow, or a bird, I think it was a crow, but a bird of some kind will eat his liver. And at night, the liver and the wound will close up, and the next day it'll start again. So basically, he is perpetually stuck on this mountain, being eaten by this crow every day. And at night, it grows back, and the next morning he has to go through it again. So you have that. Proteus is, I believe, Greek mythology, but he is also known as the Old Man of the Sea. And he's a trickster, and he likes to hoard information for himself. So you can see parallels between the two characters, where Proteus is Tom, the old guy, who is hoarding whatever is up at the lighthouse for himself, possibly playing tricks on Winslow's mind. And then you have Prometheus, which is paralleled in Winslow's story, in that he sees something that he deserves, and so he figuratively and literally climbs Mount Olympus. He climbs to the top of the lighthouse and takes whatever is up there for himself, and ultimately, at the end of the film, it leads to his death.
Right, he's getting eaten by that bird.
Yeah.
At the end, it's eating his liver.
Which, just as a note, that whole scene where you have this like monologue. I mean, it's a monologue where he is just cursing him like an old sailor's speak. It's so hard to follow, but it's really funny in that little moment, because at the end, after he curses him, I love that Ephraim just kind of goes, "Fine, I like your cooking."
Right,
Like,
have it
it's
your
just
way,
it's
like your cooking.
I couldn't help but laugh at that. I thought it was just great to have this like shift in emotion where it's,
Yeah.
it goes from them being weirdly funny together, they're drunk and they're just, being weirdos and oddballs. And then it just shifts. All of a sudden he's angry, like it's probably the alcoholism, who knows. And then it just goes back to being funny again. It's definitely like that whole scene is a little bit of a roller coaster. Excuse me. But so I guess ultimately it comes down to like, do you think there was something supernatural there, or is that all psychological?
I don't know, man. And that's the thing. Like, I think what you just described with Prometheus and Proteus, if that interested you, like, it interested me, but if basically watching a movie where everything is alluding to something else, if that kind of thing interests you, then go ahead and watch The Lighthouse, because you'll probably be able to derive a lot from it. Maybe you'll definitely derive what we were just talking about, because that's exactly what happened. It was clearly a Proteus and Promethean kind of reference, or Prometheus reference. But I think that these guys were going insane. I think that they were going insane. I think that this is kind of an idea of these old sailors' tales, don't mess with the goals, and these sirens or harpies or whatever they're supposed to be that appears in the movie, and they're deadly, and it just, to me, I don't think you're supposed to know. I don't think you're supposed to be able to tell if there was anything supernatural going on, or if they were just going insane. And I think that's kind of the point of that movie, I suppose. I think that's kind of what they were going for.
To make you think.
To make you think. And to be honest, it made me think that I'll probably never watch that one again. And
afterwards, I had to watch something lighthearted. Like, I think I put on Finding Dory. I mean, it's an intense movie. It really is. And I feel like I can't finish up this movie if we're not going to talk about The Mermaid. What in the world? I mean,
no, I'm having a weird like mental vision. Was The Mermaid cut? Was that in color? Or was that in black and white too?
I'm pretty sure
Did
it was
we
black
get
and
any
white.
color? Okay, it was all black and white. I don't know why.
I think I would have noticed it, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah. I can't remember if we got any flashbacks in color in that movie. I don't think we did. I'm not going to rewatch it to find out, but I don't think that we did get any of those flashbacks.
Do you think there was a mermaid?
I think that they were.
Because we know that there was the little the trinket that he had.
Right, the guy before him, he had referenced that he went insane thinking about mermaids.
Right.
So yeah, I think it was a mermaid, and I guess maybe if you go by that path,
maybe there was a monster.
Maybe we
up
are
at the
supposed
top.
to believe that. Yeah. Maybe we are supposed to believe that this is something supernatural going on, and they were cursed. Maybe because he killed the gull, which is supposed to be the soul of a dead sailor. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's just. I think you can take from this movie what you want to take from it, but I think that it was expertly filmed, and I think that I don't know. This movie had a lot going against it, ratings-wise, from the beginning. It's very different. It's black and white, which immediately is going to turn It's black and white, which means it's going to throw a lot of people off right away. There's two characters in this movie. Keep that in mind. The cast is two people. It's Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. So
except for the like small cameos that like a couple actors make. I mean, overall the entire script is maybe four people.
Right, exactly. Yeah, very few people other than maybe like flashbacks or something. But it had a lot going against it for anybody to really say that they loved that movie. It was very different. It was definitely a bold move to try and film that. I think it's a critic's movie. I think it's a movie meant to have discussion about. I think it's a movie meant to analyze and talk about whether, it's Inception, it's Shutter Island. Does the top stop spinning or not? Are they in a dream or not? Was Leonardo DiCaprio actually crazy or not? It could go either way. It's you can watch it and you can derive from it what you will. I think that this was a movie for people that really like to think. You can't turn your brain off and watch this one. It's gonna go completely over your head.
Yeah.
And it's hard to keep up with because, again, it felt like I was reading a book.
Yeah.
It was black and white. The scenery doesn't change. You're looking at the same two people. Their appearance doesn't change. It's just their behavior. And so you may as well close your eyes and watch this movie once you get kind of the first 20 minutes in, because it's all going to be basically the same after that. I don't know. This one I didn't love, but Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score was a 90%, which doesn't surprise me, and the audience score was like a 72% is what I got. So what did you think watching this one from kind of a critic's point of view? How'd you like it?
So again, cinematography, which is what I love, with my background in my film studies. Cinematography I thought was fantastic. I think it is up to par with some of the best films out there from back in the day, like Citizen Kane, Casablanca, like those iconic films. I think if this movie had been made back then, although it wouldn't have been received the same way because of some of the imagery, I think this movie is up to par with the masters as far as like the directing of the photography of the entire thing, which is why I liked it so much, because visually I thought it was stunning. There was a lot of good things going for it as far as the camera work. The writing, it was difficult to follow. I tend to be really good at following films that have that kind of speech. I thought Willem Dafoe did an amazing job talking like a sailor, like amazing. I was very sold on his acting phenomenal there. They both did a great job.
The most talented caveman of all time.
So the writing itself was bizarre. Like I said, it's hard to follow because you're not sure who to believe. And I think that kind of works against the film. But I think the film itself is intended to be an avant-garde piece. I think it's an art piece. It's not exactly a movie that you're going to go and see, with a family. It's one of those movies that is intended for people who are probably going to write a paper on it. It's intended for thinkers, and I think that's really the person that it's going to find a niche with, and potentially be talked about in film classes, maybe 10, 15, 20 years from now. Sound is a little hard to talk about because there really isn't much sound in the film except for the incessant foghorn that you hear throughout the film, and it is so annoying. Like, and in that's how it's supposed to be, because you even see Ephraim, the first time he hears it, he kind of does this like little neck thing where he immediately doesn't like the foghorn. And so I think there's some symbolism there in that the foghorn is supposed to increase the intensity of the film, or the tension. I think there's definitely some symbolism there, but overall, I give the movie 75. So a 7.5 out of 10, just because of the masterful cinematography, and that I like that it makes you think, and there's references there that aren't easy to pick up on, and I don't think that every film should be easy. So I give it. I don't agree with like the 90-something% that Rotten Tomatoes gave it. I think that's the score weighing heavily on one side than the other. Probably critics. But 7.5, maybe closer to 8 stars, because it's one of those films that I could easily write a 10-page paper on.
Yeah, and I think the reasons that you liked it, to be honest, are probably the reasons I didn't. I'm just not interested in watching a movie that I'm. And of course, somebody's going to say, yeah, a movie that you have to actually think, you just want to watch something mindless. And not necessarily. I like a good psychological movie. I like a psychological thriller. I just kind of felt like I was waiting for something to happen for this whole movie, and I never really got there.
Yeah.
It kind of just was a flat plateau. I didn't love it, honestly. I think, again, there's stuff that probably went over my head, and there's going to be some people that are going to tell me, some viewers that are going to listen to this and say, well, you just can't appreciate it. And that's probably true. But again, I saw trailers for this movie just like anybody else. I didn't seek it out. It was a popular movie on Amazon Prime, and I watched it. I would probably give this one a 5. I appreciate the cinematography, and Willem Dafoe, Robert Pattinson, phenomenal acting. I mean, Willem Dafoe's incredible always, and Robert Pattinson here, if you want a good kind of pre-show of what your Batman is going to be, then go check him out, because he's an interesting character in this, but he's definitely intense and dark. It was a little too much for me. I wouldn't really recommend this one, so I'm gonna give this one a 5 out of 10, and that's that. So anybody viewing, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think. Better, worse.
I
no
also would
different.
love to know what some of our viewers' thoughts are on what the
Definitely.
film was meant to be. There's symbolism there in the seagulls. There's symbolism in the foghorn. What the hell did he see inside that? Like, that thing opened up by itself at the end. Like, I just want to know what people think. Maybe there's better theories out there. I don't know, because it's one of those. I tend to be very good at picking up on cues that films give and things like that. And this is one of those films where I had absolutely zero idea what to think at the end. So yeah, I would love to hear what other people's opinions are. So
Cool.
Down
So
below.
The Lighthouse, you heard it from us. If you haven't seen it, there you go. Now you can make your decision. If you have seen it, like you said, let us know what you think. And on to movie number 3 out of 3.